The Biden administration appears to not be buying some of the assurances that have come out of the Israeli government on whether or not they are using American weapons to commit war crimes. On Monday, a leaked internal memo from the State Department shows that officials at 4 U.S. State Department bureaus do not believe the Israeli government's assurances that it is using American weaponry in Gaza in compliance with international law, rejecting them as, quote, neither credible nor reliable. The leaked document raises serious concern over noncompliance with international law, specifically citing the Israeli military's repeated attacks on civilian infrastructure, refusal to investigate or punish those responsible for atrocities, and the killing of humanitarian workers and journalists at an unprecedented rate, according to Reuters. The memo also points to Israel's arbitrary rejection of humanitarian aid trucks, which has fueled famine in the Gaza Strip. The Bureau's conclusion matches that of officials at the United States Agency for International Development. So this is, look, these are leaks. These are going to have to be addressed. Internally, though, it appears that you have a lot of people in the government saying Netanyahu and the Israeli government are currently engaged in ethnic cleansing and doing war crimes. That is very significant. Now, that said, that does not mesh with the U.S. government's official position of the United States, which is still arm them and back them 100%. And occasionally be like, oh, please, Netanyahu, don't do that. We would be very unhappy with you if you killed civilians, but we're not going to look into it and we're not going to do anything about it, but please don't. Oh, okay. Sternly worded letter. Now, a spokesperson for the U.S. State Department subsequently indicated that the Biden administration has not found Israel to be in violation of international humanitarian law, drawing outrage from analysts and members of Congress who say it is obvious that Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza, but that appears to be a pattern for the United States government. Of having one official position and an unofficial position. So now, for example, President Biden claims that, yeah, I'm in favor of a two-state solution. But yet, privately behind the scenes, he and his administration have been working to make sure that any vote in the UN of the creation of a Palestinian state fails. The administration has also tried to stop the International Criminal Court from issuing an arrest warrant for Netanyahu on the commission of war crimes. They're also making sure that any investigation into mass graves of Palestinians found in places where the IDF has raided hospitals do not get investigated. There are no investigations, and that in the investigation, Israel, they should be able to be allowed to investigate themselves. Oh, really? What happens when you get to investigate yourself? You usually come up with not being guilty of anything. That's what happens. It's like a cop's investigating themselves. Of course, they're never going to admit to any wrongdoing. That's what the Biden administration is doing right now, while also claiming anti-Semitism on college campuses aimed at protesters, many of whom happen to be Jewish. So let's be honest about that. Joe Biden is sitting back and allowing red state governors to bust the heads of college kids using armed police. Now, he hasn't called in the National Guard, despite the fact that right-wingers can't wait to have the National Guard come in and bust heads, but there are snipers on roofs at Columbia, and there are, again, armed police that are out there, harassing journalists, arresting them, as well as protesters. Again, in Texas, a journalist was literally tackled and arrested, and he was charged with assault on an officer. Come on. Come on. Again, there was footage showing the Texas state troopers hurling a journalist onto the ground with his camera after he appeared to bump into the back of an officer as police were moving a group of demonstrators. Yeah, he's a journalist with a camera. Oops, that was a mistake. It was an accident. Doesn't matter. Police have to be deployed to crush journalists, to crush dissent. And paint the protesters as all violent. Now, you have media out there calling Columbia protesters January 6th. No, they're not trying to overthrow the government. They're peace protesters. Well, they've occupied a building. Yeah, a college building, a college hall. Not quite the same as trying to, interfere in an election. Okay, to interfere with the peaceful transfer of power. Completely different. Anybody's calling it, it's just like January 6th. It's an insurrection. Has no idea what they're talking about. It's not an insurrection. Nowhere near it. It's a peace protest that is being crushed by police and armed police officers and snipers that are out there on the roofs. What do you expect them to do? But look, again, the refrain from people that are defending ethnic cleansing when it comes to the Israeli government is, well, why didn't Hamas just give up the hostages then? This would all end if you just surrender the hostages. But is that true? No. Hamas has already offered to release all the hostages on several occasions if the IDF were to leave Gaza, and most recently to not invade Rafah. That was rejected. The newest very, very generous offer from the Israelis is a 40-day ceasefire in exchange for all the hostages. And then after the 40 days is up, then they level Rafah. Oh, great. Okay, lovely. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter to the Israeli government if Hamas releases the hostages. They're going to invade Rafah anyway. It's not about the hostages. 1 million plus Palestinians have taken refuge in Rafah. It's the last place they have. They're going in anyway. The goal here is not to get the hostages back. It's to flatten the city. That's it. Their goal, number one goal, is destroy Hamas. And it just so happens that they've labeled every Palestinian as Hamas. It's not an accident here. And our administration, even though they know that there are war crimes, they don't trust Israeli reports. Our own government doesn't trust it. Not credible, not reliable. These reports of American weaponry that we've given them, that we've paid for with our tax money, being used in the commission of war crimes. And yet our government, our administration is not going to do a damn thing to stop it. And that's the tragedy.